All right, folks, welcome to the weekly Manchester United show. I'm your host, as always, Phil Barrett. I'm my regular co-host, a fantastic Colm McGuigan. How you doing, mate? How was the weekend?
All good. How's things? Yeah, not too bad. Obviously poor result, but we'll battle on.
You up to do anything nice this weekend?
Just in New York, mate. Nothing too exciting. Here for a couple of days, and I'm off to Cleveland for the Matchroom show on next Saturday. Montana Love against Stevie Spark in Cleveland, and then I'm off to Austin, Texas for another one.
And Chocolatito Estrada in Phoenix. Ooh,
That's
I
it's
can't wait to watch that fight.
3 weeks. I'll be a cracker. Can't wait for myself. So
Absolutely.
should be good.
I might come out there and join you. It'll be an absolute privilege to see someone like Chocolatito fight and
Shoot.
El Gallo, the chicken in Strata. So looking forward to that fight. Want to say a massive thank you to everyone for all the kind birthday messages. Haven't got a chance to respond to most people, but trust me, it really meant a lot to me. Thank you so much. I've milked it all week. But thanks to everyone. I had a great time Saturday night. I was out Saturday night with my friends. Had a few performance enhancers, shall we say, and had a great night. So thank you to everyone for all your kind messages. Then I woke up on Sunday to watch United, and I said something on Twitter and I meant that I caught a fly and made him watch it instead of killing him. But here's the thing, Colm. We said this in a podcast before. The road back to redemption is littered with landmines, and you're going to have games United should win, and you knew they were going to have a new manager bounce with Unai Emery, and this is what surprised me about. We talk about squad depth, everything else, but we'll talk about something else because to me, I think before you can talk about that, there's certain things you have to do as a professional footballer. And we've talked about this over and over again on this podcast about the intangibles, about the things of coming out matching intensity, matching desire, matching will to win, want to win. All those things has to happen. You knew in the first 20 minutes Villa were going to come flying at you, right, under Unai Emery. But you need to just look completely ill prepared for that. And the second half, they're back in the game. They throw the game away in the first 5 minutes of the second half, the first 10 minutes of the first half. That's not acceptable. And here's the thing about that. If you look at that third goal, Jesus, the defending is atrocious. Was there no one tracking Jacob Ramsey? Nobody? Because he was wide open on the edge of the 18-yard box to tap it in. I know Casemiro gets drawn to the ball. But someone else has got to cover and take a spur man. Where's the communication in midfield to make sure the runners are tracked? Looked like defending was something that they just didn't want to do. But Ten Hag is in a really important stage of his career at United where he's finding out about who he can trust and who he can't trust. And one thing about him is you don't get 5 or 6 bad games. So he will be learning about his fringe players that he can trust and who he can't trust. And those fringe players will have to be changed. Obviously, they were missing a number of players on Saturday, on Sunday, which you could tell. And lastly, I made a weather analysis on Cristiano Ronaldo a couple of weeks ago where I said his life as a top level footballer is over, in my opinion. I think it's safe to say the same of Van de Beek and give it up because Van de Beek had 18 touches on Saturday, the lowest of any United player on Sunday. David De Gea had 25. Ronaldo had less than De Gea too. That tells you everything you need to know. You cannot play in an influential position, an attacking midfield, in a Bruno Fernandes position where you are responsible for creating and touch the ball 18 times. Something's seriously wrong with that picture.
I think first of all, it was like watching Manchester United of last season or the season before when we lacked we lacked that ability to control a game from the offset, and we give the opponent a 2-goal lead when it's so hard to come back from that, and this team just doesn't have the minerals at the moment to do so. Whenever we're looking, like, first of all, Bruno's influential to this team whether you like it or not, and that was evident.
Mm-hmm.
You've referred to
It
Van de
was.
Beek there. Van de Beek's not a Manchester United player. Get rid of him.
No.
Needs to go. I think it would benefit him to go back to Eredivisie and play for Ajax because that seems to be his level. You know, he's tried it. He went on loan to Everton. He couldn't do it there either. He's not going to do it at United. So forget about this experiment. There's no point anymore. I think it's also important that it's okay to criticise Ten Hag. Ten Hag's going to get things wrong. He's going to make wrong decisions. He's going to raise eyebrows, and that's what he done at the weekend. The team selection in itself wasn't too sure about it. I mean, Martial came off the bench and done absolutely nothing. He was atrocious as well. And again, you know, we're basing our opinions on him when he's coming back from an injury, but it always seems to be that Anthony Martial's coming back from an injury. So where does the buck stop with that one as well? I think the main thing that we can take from this is the strength and depth isn't there. Me and you talked about this weeks ago on the podcast where we said we need another striker. We need that other striker in January. It's not even a what if, it's a necessity now. We need a striker in January. It's evident from what we've seen at the weekend that that's what we're missing. Ronaldo is miles off it. I mean, to give him the captain's armband again is another poor decision from Ten Hag, in my opinion, because on one hand, you've let this guy embarrass himself and embarrass the club publicly. Then you've froze him out, which is great, and all the fans agree with it for a week. For a week, by the way, which again is a wee bit, but that's needs must in this situation when you haven't got a striker. You bring him back in, you give him the armband. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. Just give it to De Gea. Why give Cristiano Ronaldo the armband? What's he done to deserve it? Like that's a slap in the face for some of the other players in that team, in my opinion. Again, Ten Hag's going to make wrong decisions, and it's okay to criticise him, but we just weren't at the races at the weekend.
Yeah, I can understand the criticism regarding Ronaldo captaincy. I probably agree with that too. I'm not sure he should have got it. I think it would be better to reward someone like Lisandro Martinez maybe with it.
Absolutely.
Because it's also about sending a message to Ronaldo and other players that petulance is not going to get rewarded. I don't think it was the reason United lost on Sunday. You criticised Ten Hag's team selection. What would you have done differently, Amit? What would you have picked differently?
I mean, again, Ronaldo. We're playing Ronaldo. I'm not too sure if I would have played Ronaldo. I'm criticising his decision to give him the armband.
Sure.
Donny van de Beek. Again, I probably would have played. I don't know. I don't even know if you can play Fred McTominay in there. But again, I think they give you something different to what Van de Beek offers. Like, what is Van de Beek? What's Van de Beek done in order to reward himself for that position? Because we've been very, we've been saying on this podcast about how Ten Hag has been rewarding people for their performances. What has Van de Beek done to get into that team? Nothing.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And look, we don't see him in training, and I think when we talk about Donny van de Beek, it's important we mention this because I think decisions have been made about him in training that you can't make in a game because. Solskjaer and other people that see him every day don't trust him. Now, this is what. So Solskjaer didn't play him. Ranić didn't play him. Everyone was saying if Ten Hag comes in, this is the guy that he played his best football under, he will resurrect him. And if not, it's time to cut our losses. Well, we're sitting here in November. And I know he had an injury. But he wasn't great in midweek either. He's just started 2 games back to back, and I can't remember a single thing he did in either of them. In fact, I can't remember a single good game he's ever had for United. I don't want to be unfair to him, but I desperately wanted this to work, right? I liked the signing, and when I saw him at Ajax, I thought, fantastic player, and really was excited at his arrival, and like everyone else I was making excuses for the first year and a half, but he goes to Everton on loan. He starts 6 of their first 7 games, so he can't complain that he wasn't getting game time, and he scored 1 goal there, I think, and then he picked up an injury. He's been injured obviously, but when you get a chance at Manchester United, he doesn't have to be perfect, he doesn't have to come out and play like he's played 35 games, but he has to show something. Has to come out and show something that says you deserve to keep being picked.
But here's the thing as well, like he referred to the right. I listened to his post-game comments from Ten Hag, and he referred to, Rashford. It was a necessity to play him on the right, and unfortunately we had to play him there because we had no one else. But why not play Rashford in the position of Donny van de Beek? Because that would have been okay, and I think Rashford could have done a better job in there, and then played Elanga out wide
Mate, I
or
don't
play.
think Rashford's skill set is suited to being an attacking midfielder. I
I
really
mean, I
don't.
mean, he was only playing just behind Ronaldo. Really, that's where Van de Beek was meant to be playing. He wasn't really playing the full Bruno role because you had obviously Casemiro and Eriksen sitting in behind. But again, like there's no like Fred plays in that position a lot for Brazil. Why not play Fred there then? Do you know what I mean? What was the reason he played Van de Beek back to back in that position? And again, you're referring to training. Maybe it is. Maybe he's looking $1 million in training. But the facts of the matter are he's never looked $1 million in a game ever.
No, no. I don't
So
think. I don't think for me for Van de Beek, it's a conversation that needs to be continued. I've completely made up my mind now. I have zero expectation that the lad will ever deliver. And I think we're looking at someone like a Davy Klaassen. You know,
yeah.
was exceptional at Ajax, but he just hasn't been able to adjust to this level. And you know, I think that one of the positives, I suppose, is that United do seem to be learning from defeats, where in the past they weren't. In the past, it was. We'll get to that later. In the past, a defeat meant 2, 3, 4, 5. But with Ten Hag's much more ruthless. So if you don't play well, he drops you. Now, here's the thing: he has to have the quality to rotate, and it's obvious he doesn't, right? When we look at things he has fixed, he wasn't going to fix the whole squad in one window, right? So obviously you need to continue to buy and supplement that squad, and I think there's a couple. They need maybe a couple, but they need a striker, obviously. But the squad, not rather than the team, the first starting 11, I think needs a
Well, look,
striker.
look, look at the moment. Where's Anthony? We've heard nothing.
No, I know it's bizarre, like because
What's
Anthony,
the
even
story
same with
with
Jadon
Anthony?
Sancho, like they've both been out more or less the same time. I haven't even heard why Anthony's out.
Is there something we don't know? Is there is
I
there
don't think
something
so. I
going
don't
on?
know. It's interesting because there's nobody said anything about his actual injury. This when the Brazil squad gets announced, what, tomorrow, doesn't
It
it, or
got
today?
announced today. He's in the
He's in
squad.
the squad.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me because Sancho ill. He's been sick a lot, that kid. And
He has.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that genuinely he deserves empathy. Obviously, if the kid is sick, but he can kiss his World Cup goodbye.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a healthy thing for him. I think it will help him to focus, take a month off, to work on himself, his game, to be out of the spotlight. We all know what happened in the Euros when he missed a penalty. And I think it'll help him to not have to go to Qatar, especially if he's going to go there and sit on the bench. What's the point of that? I think he has a bit of an identity crisis going on in terms of what he is. If you look at Garnacho is a winger. There's no doubt about that. He's quick. He take you on. He's skillful. He scores goals. He scored against Sociedad. He was unlucky not to score against Villa. I
But
don't
he's
see.
raw.
No, he's
He's
very raw. But
raw.
I'm just saying that in terms of his style, that's what a winger is to me. When I look at Jadon Sancho, I don't see someone that runs in behind. I don't see someone with lightning pace. I see someone that plays in front of you, that's technical, that's gifted, that can put balls in behind you, no problems. But he's not someone that gets in behind you in the way of a winger would. Like Rashford will beat you for pace.
I
But
agree with you, but
I, I
that's the
but then what
evolution
do
of
we
the
do with
game.
him?
I understand what you're saying. That's the evolution of the game. Garnacho's a more old fashioned winger, hits the chalk, gets down the line, beats the wing back and crosses into the box. Sancho's always been the player that cuts inside forward, and that's his game. We knew that whenever we signed him. I don't know how we adapt him into this Ten Hag system. And like you're saying, I agree with you. Garnacho offers you so much more as a winger. But Sancho, again, like there was a time there for a few weeks, Sancho looked great. So he comes and goes and
But
he's
all the
not
goals came
consistent.
from in the middle. If you look at those goals when he played well, they all came centrally. On top of which, and the thing is, if you play this system right, you must have lightning quick wingers because a lot of times you get pressed high, the space is in behind, right? So if Sancho's not giving you that in behind, lying on the last defender, lightning pace, if you give Sancho the ball in front of you, he has the ability to beat you, right? Because he's technically very sound, but he's not lightning. And I think that in a team that plays, with a fourth, with those two wide players and a central striker, your wide players have to be really quick. And I just like I think Sancho in the Van de Beek role on Sunday would have been much better than what we saw with Donny Van de Beek.
But what's the reason he's not playing there? What's the reason
It's a good
that Ten
question. I
Hag's
don't know.
continuing to play him on the wing? If he like, because again, maybe he is very fast. Maybe we're just not seeing it. Maybe he hasn't really got out of second gear, because it doesn't really seem like he has, apart from a few games where you said he scored in the theme more central goals. So again, that's something obviously we need to look at. I mean, Anthony's a winger. He cuts inside. He's got that ability to hit the chalk as well, and has the pace to beat a player. So I'm not too sure. And I mean, if it does
And
mean
he's
that,
quicker than Sancho, though.
yeah, and that's what I mean. If it does mean that we need to see Sancho down the middle, well, what's the problem in trying it? Because we need someone down the middle at the moment. I don't think he's going to be an outright striker for you, but I mean, a false nine, I think it could possibly work.
Well, you look at his goal against Liverpool. Where'd it come from?
Centre, didn't it?
Look at his goal against Leicester. Where'd it come from? Centre.
Again,
So,
exactly.
I'm trying to remember the other goal he scored. I think it was in the Europa League. They're all central. No, it was in the Premier League. And they're all coming from central positions, right? So, if you go and watch a lot of his Dortmund clips, a lot of his assists, right, they're not getting down the line, cutting the ball back. They're playing in front of the defence. And I just think that's a bit of a challenge when you don't have that lightning pace. He's technically brilliant, and I still think he has a tremendous career at United. I thought up until the break prior to when the Queen died, he was in brilliant form. But that game against Chelsea, I mean, his body language, he looked like he was mentally suffering. Like, his confidence was off. Maybe he was sick. It was very possible. You have to give him the benefit of the doubt. But that was one of his worst performances, and he hasn't played since. So maybe there is something going on there. I don't know. Other things from the weekend, we talked about Ronaldo. Jesus Christ, there's these. What have I told you about inviting these strippers on these strows? Right?
You are a
I told them never to bother me when I'm working.
Dirty wee man.
So lots of other things to talk about from the weekend. As I said, I feel like United are in a situation where they learn quickly from a defeat, right? And I feel like this is not going to turn into a second defeat. One of the things we talked about last week was Fulham, right? Fulham are robbed against Man City, right? Now, I don't care what anyone says. That De Bruyne penalty is a disgrace.
Oh,
I mean, mate, come on, right? I mean, they should be embarrassed at giving that.
But again, this is where the VAR. We've talked about this before.
But forget about VAR for a minute.
But there's no consistency with refereeing or VAR. There's
No,
no one
look
that's
what
being
Craig
held
Pawson did.
responsible. I know there's no one being held responsible for these decisions. After the game, the referee should be interviewed. It's as simple as that. You should have to come out and explain your decisions.
I also want you to think about something. You see that Ronaldo Tyrone Mings thing?
Yeah.
Why is that any different to Scott McTominay?
True.
Why is it not a penalty?
I know. True.
I mean, he wrestles Ronaldo to the ground.
Yeah.
He holds him. And I've probably
think
seen about 16 times since then of people being held from corners and it not given. In fact, one of them was with the same referee.
It's true.
And that was my issue. Look, if it's a penalty, it's always a penalty.
Yeah.
Right? Then give it. Right? But don't be turning. I mean, the Jadon Sancho penalty against, I think it was Newcastle. Right? Where he gets not given. Arguably, they could have had a penalty to accept that.
He was clipped against Newcastle, clearly.
That
was a penalty.
Much more of a penalty than De Bruyne's.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the problem, and that's where I'm saying there is no consistency with VAR or refereeing, unlike any other country, because it seems to be whenever you watch European football or you watch football in other countries, there's consistency. At least there is consistency. With England, it's just a free-for-all.
Yeah, I don't understand it. There is no doubt in my mind that referees referee different teams differently, right?
Oh, 100%.
Based on the media coverage, based on the fear of getting a decision wrong and the blowback. So they always err on. So I'm not giving this because I don't want to have the headlines tomorrow. Talksport, Gabby Agbonlahor, Gabby Agbonlahor screaming like a 3-year-old child that this is not fair. And everyone else adding to the crescendo. You've almost never heard a thing about De Bruyne's dive. Now, had that of being a United player,
yeah,
there would have been wall-to-wall coverage about diving and this is unacceptable and this is cheating, and you'd have had Leanne Sanderson putting out her verbal diarrhea. I mean, no disrespect to Leanne Sanderson, but I'm not sure if I've ever found a human being that I've disagreed with more on just about every post and tweet that she puts out. I mean, she turned around after the Chelsea game.
Do you want to invite her on and let you speak to her? I think that'd be great.
I just don't understand what she watches.
I'm going to tweet her.
Because she watches something completely different to me. I mean, she was slaughtering United's approach to the Chelsea game. I'm like, did you watch it? And if you did, do you know what you're watching? Because there's no way you can a functioning brain can watch that game. It's that United weren't trying to win it. What? And anyway, but to be fair to her, Gabby Bonahor, there's so many people whose punditry is fueled by their hatred and inability to be objective, and this is why I don't like the banterification of punditry. Now we get out here, the Paramount Plus, Micah Richards, Jamie Carragher, Kate Abdo, right, and it's essentially this: Micah Richards, Jamie Carragher, good shot. And then some shit banter about their club. And when one of the cringiest things in the world is people trying to be funny that aren't funny, right?
See, I actually think
what is this? But honestly, okay, fine if you want to have a stand-up comedy football show. If that's what you want, that's okay, right? But this is what happens when you get Steve Nice and Chad Ochocinco doing football punditry. It turns it into nonsense, right? Absolute nonsense. I mean, Steve Nice had a football bingo card, right? Brilliant basketball player. But I sat and I'm like, how long is it going to take before he says this is a tough place to go? Bing! 30 seconds, right? You know, everything came back to Spurs because he's a massive Spurs fan. Great corner. Yeah, I remember whenever Harry Kane did that. Yeah, because he doesn't watch football. Notice Tim Hart, by the way, right? Blatantly obvious that this is an example of Tim Hart, right? When someone scored. Ball down the line, crossover, header, 1-zip. Yeah, I know Tim will have eyes. You know, like Jesus Christ. Or, yeah, Harry Kane starting up front, got 23 in 45 games. I can read a stat sheet too, Tim.
I think we should start a petition for me and you to run the US side.
But mate, we should be demanding more of this, right? Hey, imagine the Super Bowl. David Beckham sitting there, half-time in the Super Bowl. Yeah, Kansas is a tough place to go, mate. You know, and sorry, that's my worst English accent ever. But can you imagine the response from Americans? Would be like, "What the fuck is this?" Like what?
Comes with the territory,
but it doesn't. This is the problem with the gimmicky shit of football. Why can't you just sell the game on itself? Why do you have to put all these stupid gimmicks? Who are you trying to appeal to? Are you afraid that someone won't watch this unless Steve Nice and Chad Ochocinco is doing the commentary?
Well, I'm just.
I mean, what does that say about the game itself?
I'm glad we've got Gary Neville and.
Well, Gary Neville was rightly rinsed on Friday. I don't know if you saw it, but he was called out for his hypocrisy on Qatar, and I want to talk about this really quickly, right? Because his mate Beck's taking millions to promote something that is unconscionable. Now I want you to think, Colm, if you lost your life building a stadium for a fucking football match, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry to use this language, but building stadiums, having your human rights violated, your civil rights violated, not paid, the most despicable treatment, your family's left to pick up the pieces, and the executives of football are sitting around the table with people that did this and going, who cares about his life? Stick to the football, lads! How much are we making? It's obscene. You'd want someone to care. You'd want someone to say, hey, you know what? These human lives matter. And we're not going to sit around the table with the people that basically killed these people. Right? And forget that it happened. And then try to tell you, me, and everyone else to not talk about politics or talk about football. This is the same organisation that was investigated by the FBI for corruption. Right? They're going to tell us that we can't have social comedy. Now, just to finish my last point on this, I completely understand the whataboutery. I completely understand people saying, well, what about this country? What about that country? And that's perfectly legitimate. Perfectly legitimate. If you want to attack someone's moral consistency, do that. But that's a different point than saying that a World Cup should not be held in a country that will jail people for signs of open affection, right? For human affection, will execute people who are gay, right? This is unacceptable in any shape, and totally unacceptable. And for anyone to legitimize that because of enough money, by the way, if you can hold the World Cup in November, there's nothing sacred in football anymore. None of your sacred values that matter to you or matter to the people that run this game, because everything is for sale.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, right? The World Cup shouldn't happen there, but the long and short of it is it's happening. We can't change that. No one can change it. So for Gary Neville to be attacked, there is no morals in football anymore. It is all just literally money, money, money. It's a money-driven sport, and that's the way it is.
It doesn't
and
need
we're
the
going to have
money.
to get used to it. No, but at the end of the day, that we're not going to change that. Gary Neville, I think, was right in what he said. What do you want him to do? Not go?
Yes.
You want him not to say,
Why
no,
not?
I'm not going?
Why
Why
not?
is it not a great privilege of his to go and commentate at a World Cup? It
Absolutely not.
is.
Mate,
It is.
then you legitimize everything that these people are doing.
You don't, because I agree with what he said. He will do his own thing there to bring this to the
Why
forefront.
can't he do it from a studio in London?
Well, of course he could, but is he not better being there and highlighting these issues while he's?
Well, we don't need Gary Neville to highlight these issues. Gary Neville's not a war correspondent.
Well, then we don't need Gary Neville not to go then, if that's.
Of course, now we're back to where we started, right? The right and proper thing to do would be to say, you know what, I'm not profiting off this. I'm taking no coin. I'm not going over there, and it goes back to what I just said. Imagine you were killed in building one of these stadiums, and Gary Neville's sitting there with a microphone going, well, who cares about Colm? Who cares about his family? Who cares about his children? Who cares about the fact his family of them are bankrupt? Who cares about any of this? There's a football match on.
But he's not really saying that.
But he is saying that because you legitimize it.
It's going to be the next one down the line. It's the rat race, really.
Come, it would cost Gary Neville nothing to turn around and say, I'm not doing this. I'm going to sit this one out, lads.
But why Gary? Why are you focusing on Gary?
Because
Neville?
Because Gary Neville pontificates to the world about morals and values and dirty money, which is fine. So be morally consistent. Because if not, you can't say another thing again. Because the next time someone's personal interests, right, are not the same as yours, and they put profit before values, well, so did you.
I don't think he's putting profit before. I don't.
Of course
think
he is.
Money aspect.
You think he's doing it for free?
No, but I don't think the money is. For all we know, he could be.
Then don't do it.
Do a charity. For all we know, he might donate it to the charity of the.
No, but we know he's not. Until he says he is, he isn't.
Yeah, but even if he isn't, the money thing is not Gary Neville's main goal at this. Gary Neville.
So what is Gary Neville doing? Thinking that the world is waiting on Gary Neville's commentary on what's happening in Qatar to find out what the situation. So why is he relevant?
Because
why is his commentary relevant to anything?
He's probably one of the best commentators in England.
But that's football.
So, yeah, so he's so
then he's no different than any of the FIFA people that are over there saying stick to football. They're doing it for personal gain.
No, I have to.
Well, it's obvious.
I think
100%.
No.
Listen, the right and proper thing to do, and other journalists, by the way, he's not alone, would be to boycott it and not cover it. Right?
Who is boycotting it?
No one. That's the problem. Right?
Okay.
And so when you get these performative gestures, right? This is about seeing to be doing the right thing, not actually doing the right thing.
Okay, so if someone called you right now and tell me the God's honest truth, because I have to be honest, I'd be away in the morning if someone rang me and said, here, Qatar, I understand that it's an issue, but I would be away in the morning and I'd be covering it. If someone asked you, you would say no. If they were offering you 10 grand to do it, because for you, the money would be more relevant.
It's silly. All I can do is this, Colm. Okay? What was it, 3 weeks ago? I had a phone call from a betting company that wanted to advertise on BTP. And they were offering really good money. And they were doing top picks, everything else. And they were offering me good money to promote it on my platforms. Money I needed. And I could have taken. And I turned around and I said, listen, boys. And I'm not no moral crusader here, right? I'm a hypocrite. I've done worse, terrible things in my life. By no means any type of example. But I'm just telling you. I said, look, I'm an advocate for a mental health charity, right? I'm a massive vocal advocate against addiction and things that destroy people's lives. I cannot square that circle by putting betting stuff on my website and knowing that there's going to be a certain percentage of people will get hurt by that. Right? I can't do it. I don't care how much money you're offering. Because I can't put my head on a pillow at night and say, you know what, I'm sitting here mouthing about mental health, about addiction and all this here, but I'm turning around and promoting gambling. You know, that negates everything that I say, because as soon as there was a financial incentive for me to do otherwise, I took it. But I can't do that. So I would like to believe that my moral compass is calibrated enough to say, no, I won't do it. Because human lives have to matter. And when you look at how many people, and we'll get back to talking United here in a minute, when you look at how many people have been hurt in the process of this World Cup, it's despicable. This is, you know, we've got the English FA making a stand, but the English FA had no problem with Saudis banning their football clubs. They had no problems with the UAE banning their football clubs. They had no problems with Saxon Shinawatra banning their football clubs. Right? There's no problems with people banning their football clubs that make political contributions to people that, quite frankly, are despots.
But if the countries are going, so England are going, every country, no country is boycotting this tournament. Why should Gary Neville? Because you're putting the focus on him and saying,
because
Gary
you are
Neville's
responsible
so
solely for your own. Because Gary Neville's not responsible for everyone else. Gary Neville's responsible for himself. So Gary Neville has, and I agree with him, by the way, on a lot of things that he says, right, where he morally pontificates. The problem is, if you want to take that role in life as being a moral pontificator, and you're inconsistent about it, your message is worthless. So therefore, you deserve criticism. If Dracula complains about the blood bank, it doesn't land the same, because it's hypocrisy. And this is an important point that needs to be made. But when you have someone
is it not
doing
important that someone of Gary Neville's caliber status is there?
No.
In the position he's in.
Mate, who the fuck cares about Gary Neville?
You, clearly, because you said you don't want.
But outside of the United fan circle.
Okay, so then.
I mean, how much do you care about Graham Lasso?
What's his point in not going? So what you're saying is.
But I'm saying he's a nondescript footballer. Listen.
I disagree with you completely. I mean,
if anyone's waiting on Gary Neville's commentary on what's going on in Qatar, right, we have serious problems. Anyway, let's evolve the conversation on to the Barcelona draw. Thank you, mate. Let's evolve the conversation to the Barcelona draw. Quite interesting. You knew this was going to happen, didn't you? Mr. Frankie de Jong back.
Could he be a United player by the time that we're playing him? That's the $1 million
So
question.
I've been thinking about that a lot, actually, and I'm going, how much do United need him now? I mean, if you're sitting there with 85 million to spend, the correct thing to do is go after Jude Bellingham, right?
Absolutely, but if not, and you're thinking of a midfield three of Casemiro, Bruno, and Eriksen at the moment, the major backup that you need is someone like Frankie de Jong. If one of those players are injured, can just fill in. I mean, Bellingham would be great, but are we realistically going to get Bellingham? I don't think so. Well, I think it's Neil Donny goes to City.
The problem for United is they also need a striker this summer.
Yeah.
And so I can't see a world we need to get Bellingham as top striker. But in the same time, it would be a disaster to let him go to Liverpool or City. Absolute disaster.
It was a disaster to let Haaland go and then let him go.
Oh man, I think about that and I'm going, would Haaland have went to City from United if he'd have gone to United? And if you think about the 60 million, right? All right, so let's say he has and I'm certain he has a sell-on clause to go to Real Madrid, because that's how his career's been managed by his father, right? And so I'm thinking, when you're so fixated on how much you can sell him for rather than the value that they bring to the team, that in many ways illustrates so many of the problems United have had. And the metrics that they use with how they did deals, which is why the Casemiro deal just doesn't make any sense, right? So from how United have done business in the past. So you look at Haaland, you're going, all right, so let's say you get him for 3-4 years and he scores 50 goals a season, 45. United could be sitting with a league title right now. United could be sitting with about 3 or 4 more trophies. Woodward's still in his job. You sell him for 60 million. Maybe he doesn't go to City because he's been a United, he played for United, score. It's hard to make that move. Maybe United end up losing him to Spain. Right? I mean, to me, it's like...
I think you
or maybe you don't lose him at all.
But I think you buy a player like Haaland with the knowledge that you're going to get maybe 3 to 5 years of a top level player, but ultimately he goes to Madrid, Barcelona, that type of team. And you know what? So be it. And I think we need to get past this point of caring about down the line, because it's all about the here and now. And City have
100%.
proved it now. Like, they've signed him. They've signed Julian Alvarez at the same time, who also is a top striker. And people aren't picking up on that as much because he's under the limelight of Haaland at the minute. But Julian Alvarez is a top striker. Don't get that twisted at all. He's going to score serious goals in the Premier League. So whenever you think about the strikers that they have and the options they have, and if Haaland does leave, they've got a ready-made replacement in Julian Alvarez. They're waiting.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. That's contingency thinking, right? That's what they need to do. United have not been able to do that in a long time. When I look at the Haaland situation, it's unbelievable ineptitude. It never should have been allowed to happen. And I honestly believe, had he have came to United, that City movement probably would never have happened. Right? You probably be talking about Haaland in Spain scored 150 goals. Do I care that a player comes to United and may go to Real Madrid 3-4 years from now? No, I'd rather that than I'm going to Sunderland 3-4 years from now, because that would mean they've been successful, right? So that's part of life. I don't care, but I look at that Bellingham and Haaland situation. That could have been so different for Solskjaer if he'd got the players he wanted. If you saw the players that Solskjaer wanted this club to sign, and the players they overlooked, not just Solskjaer, by the way. One other thing I want to talk about is the Glazers out situation, because United have done something unbelievably stupid again by clearly banning any form of discontent towards the Glazers. Richard Arnold's on record, quite vocal Richard Arnold in the summer, right? He seems to have lost his voice. The good guy, the guy that was out to fix everything, right? The guy that was going to do all these forums with the Glazers and all these fan events, and so the fans have every right to peacefully protest. Well, clearly they don't. I think what he meant is you have every right to protest in your bedroom, just not at Old Trafford, right? And clearly this illustrates the stupidity of United, because if you look at something like this, the optics are terrible. And if you want to add relevance to something, you ban it, right? If you want to make something more attractive, you ban it. If you want to make sure that the fans do everything they can to make sure those flags are displayed, you do this. If you just let it happen and don't draw attention to it, it blends in because you never have been doing it every week. But once you start banning it, you show what you fear. And that is a victory to United fans. Now, I emailed United, and I'm going to read this email on this very topic. I emailed Richard Arnold yesterday. Still waiting for a response. Quite chatty Richard, who was ubiquitously available for fans over the summer, where he'd respond to emails. Maybe his computer's broke, I don't know. Hi Richard, hope you're well. I'm working on a story about United banning the Glazers out flags and anything else involved with the fans peacefully voicing their discontent. I know you've been quite vocal in the past on this. You've made yourself available for fans over the summer and have went on record saying the fans have every right to peacefully protest. So I'm sure you'll be all over this. This recent development is obviously a departure from the right to peacefully protest statement. Perhaps did you mean they have a right to peacefully protest anywhere, just not at the club? If you'd like to have a chat or provide comment for the article, I'm available anytime. If not, I will note in the article that the club refused to respond. I want to give you the right to provide clarity and comment before going to print. So let's just see what they say.
How long ago
in response to that?
When did you send it?
Sent it yesterday.
Still nothing?
Nothing.
I think it's embarrassing from the club's point of view that they're banning these flags. What's the reason? What's the end goal from it? Because if anything, it just spurs you on to want to do it more. And I think these flags will become more prevalent. I think there'll be so many more people wanting to bring these flags to the game. And it's amazing to think that, like, where we are right now, and I see loads of people saying, "Oh, we haven't heard Glazers out chance, we haven't heard this." It's going on constantly, and I mean the whole Liverpool situation at the moment. It's laughable to think that Liverpool's owners have put them out there. They're going to profit of Liverpool. There's going to be owners out there who could be potential investors at Manchester United who are now going to look and say, well, Liverpool are there, they're available. And it's embarrassing that the position that the Glazers have us in right now.
Well, here's the thing about that Liverpool prospectus. It's really no different than what the Glazers did.
Nope.
And the Glazers and FSG are quite close. So they will have known this was coming. This will have been discussed in their circles. And neither FSG or the Glazers are so wealthy to where they can afford to fund these football clubs. I mean, the Glazers, are parasites. And I will never change my view on that. If you are not paid to defend this nonsense, it is completely indefensible. If you look at this, the Glazers run Manchester United for their benefit. Unless you're paid to defend that, that will never make sense to anyone. The Glazers will always be a handicap to Manchester United. Because anytime United's interest in the Glazers align, it's an accident. The only time that happens is if it's an unintended consequence, because Glazers, it's about us. Right? They've never once put their hand in their pocket. Not once. So I look at this and I'm like, the Liverpool have a better potential of getting investment because their owners aren't toxic to the brand. Manchester United's owners are toxic to the brand and they're not going to get partial investment without the option of a complete takeover. I don't see Jim Ratcliffe buying Liverpool either. He was asked about this, wasn't he? And I think he said he couldn't do it. Or maybe it was Chelsea, I can't remember. I can't see that happening. So the Glazers will be watching this very closely, obviously. And I think that to say that it's available for full sale, I haven't seen that. I think that with this as a way you get an appraisal of a football club and what it's worth, and you offer parts of it. And obviously, these people are holding on for a Super League bonanza, right? That is the only
It's not
thing.
going to happen though.
They'll get it in a different format. They'll just be called something else, right? I think I don't think it helps the Glazers or Hicks and Gillette or Glazers and FSG that other American owners are buying other Premier League clubs because it immediately raises a suspicion towards them. Now, obviously, there's been that towards the Glazers anyway, but this brings other fans into the fold. And I think that's not. I think they'd prefer that wasn't the case. But I look at this, and that to me, the Glazers and FSG are similar financially in that they're highly vulnerable to the behaviour of financial markets. On Friday here, the Feds raised the interest rates 0.75%. That's massive, absolutely massive. So I look at this and I'm going, both of those football clubs, United needs serious investment. The Glazers don't have that money. So unless there's a Super League in the next 24 months, then United will desperately need investment. And so that's going to come from somewhere. It's either
But
going to come from
the Liverpool also need that investment right now.
Yeah,
Is
of course, they're in the same situation. They're in the same situation. You know, I mean, Klopp needs money. The money's not there, right? So, you know, this is a football club during a pandemic that borrowed money. Well, has to borrow money for PPE, for the payroll loans, right? And so the reality is to compete with the likes of City and Newcastle now, you can't run football clubs this way. You can't run them as as a personal ATM and then hand back, you know, here, I'll take 100 out of your pocket, I'll give you 20 back and tell you I'll give you something to spend. You know, you can't run a football club that way anymore. You can't compete with the cities of this world anymore. I mean, they have they own, well, it's City Football Group. Take a look at how many football clubs they own, how many players they own at these football clubs. They're essentially working off. There's no comparison. I mean, there's an English football has thrived off the fact that it's a competitive league. So they have to be careful about this. And this is not just a fan of another club moaning that because we're not successful. You know, I don't think it's healthy that you have one team that ridicules the rules of FFP I think that they've shown that football governance is a disgrace.
But I think even Newcastle now coming into the mix like that's just another team with the same mentality as City, and ultimately you're going to see Newcastle at the top end
Of course.
of the Premier League going forward. You're going to see Newcastle battling for titles here over the next few years. You're going to see serious investment into that squad, and other teams are going to be affected by it. And the likes of our club and Arsenal and all these other clubs are just going to fall to the wayside at some point.
Look, this is when you look at when the Glazers bought United in 2005. The only real threat of this was Roman Abramovich. None of this existed, and so financially, United cannot compete. I mean, if you looked at prior to the Brentford game, what United were working with financially, I mean, this season would have been a complete disaster if they'd have gone through with the Rabiot and Arnautovic then instead of Dulac. I mean, and that's what the Glazers' plan was. That's where obviously Brentford changed everything, right? But as I was mentioning before, when you look at how United pay and structure deals, everything's based around resale value, everything. So for them to agree to the Casemiro deal, a deal that size, I can understand if he's on a free or something, where you're doing an Nemanja Matic type deal where it's 29, you're paying 17 million or something, okay. But the Glazers don't do business like that. So something in their vision in the future changed, where they feel they will get a return on that investment, and that's not through selling the player.
It's just crazy to think, and where's the buck going to stop?
I have no idea. All right, we don't have much left. I know you've got to get out of here. What do you think will happen? You need to play Fulham next, isn't it?
We play Fulham at the weekend. We play Villa midweek, right? And then
you need to play Villa on Saturday.
Aye, but we'll play them again in the League Cup on Thursday night.
Oh, no, League Cup.
Thursday night League Cup against Villa. Hopefully a performance at Old Trafford. I don't know if he rotates much on Thursday night or with the World Cup coming up if he plays a full strength team because he's only got one game left. I think probably what he'll do is play his best 11. Maybe we'll see Martial start. I don't think we'll see Ronaldo start, but again, I've been wrong about this before. I'll probably be wrong again, and I think hopefully against Fulham we can get one more good performance in before the World Cup starts and end it on a high. And then obviously the squad are going to go to Spain, and hopefully that gives players like Sancho and some of these other players that aren't, well, we think won't be away at the World Cup, a chance to get themselves in the side.
It's a difficult game against Fulham. I think it's be interesting to see if he.
It's a tough place to go.
As you saw at the weekend, they're a good team. Andres Pereira's doing unbelievable. They're really glad to see him doing so well over there. But those will be difficult games for United. Really, really difficult games. I knew Villa would be tough. I still thought United would win, but
I love saying that line. I love saying that line, dude. It's a tough place to go because you hate hearing that. That's why I continue to say it, just in case anyone thinks I'm being serious.
But you have to laugh at some of the things that they say. I mean, these are cliches you only hear in football, right? And Steve Nash was just a walking football cliche machine. It was. Can you do it on a cold night at Stoke on it? And I'm like, mate. I suppose if I was doing basketball, it'd be something similar, or Shaquille O'Neal at the back post with a handball or something like that. I mean, that's basically what they're watching.
Skills for the next podcast.
But so someone else is really let into me with that there. I just need to watch my OnlyFans. That's where you see me in my prime. That's where you see me and on my OnlyFans account. That's where you see me at my best. So I've got a suntan like I live on a submarine. I've got a. When my socks are wet, that's because I've had a bit of leakage. It's
on that note,
we shall leave it there before we talk about your moustache.
Yep.
All right, lads. Thanks very much for everything. Thanks for all the downloads, folks. Much appreciated. We'll be back next week. We actually didn't get any questions. I will do a podcast later on tomorrow. We'll get to a bunch of questions. So sorry about that, there. We ran out of time. Colm, all the best, mate.
All right, mate. Good to see you.
See you. Bye.